Hello and welcome to episode 384 of the Stacey West podcast. My name is Gary. I will be your host for this evening, and I will be joined by Billy Big Balls from Gibraltar. Mr. Beeston, how are you?
Are they? I'm very well. Thank you. Very warm, obviously. I just feel like I have to say it now. But no, I'm very well. How are you?
I've got what looks like iodine stains on my hand, and I don't really know. I don't really know what the crack is. So I had a really bad night last night. I barely slept at all. I was awake every hour, up at 3, and then I've come downstairs this morning. I've got you. Those who are watching at home might not be able to see it, but I've got a slightly kind of puffy swelling on the inside of my eye that makes me look a bit like Frankenstein. And I've got what genuinely actually looks like fecal matter on my hands, but I've scrubbed it, and I've no idea what it is. It's, for those who are listening at home, it looks almost like when somebody smokes loads of cigarettes and the end of their fingers got nicotine stained. I don't know where it's come from. I've searched the house. I've gone all over the house looking for things that it might have come from, and we've genuinely got no idea at all.
Have you Googled it? Because it will probably be some crazy rare medical condition that means you're dying in 3 days. Because that's normally the way that it goes if you start Googling it.
No, I don't Google anything like that. So, and I'm not going to die because I'm a fitness. I went out for, this is going to be a surprise to everybody, but I went out for a run earlier. But I pushed to start a running club in Rugby because I need some motivation. I don't know if I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I did the London Marathon. I kept it quite quiet. And after the training, now the training has died away from that. I found it really hard to motivate. So I put a call out for people in Rugby, which is my kind of hometown. It's not where I live now, but it's kind of my hometown, to say, does anybody fancy going for a run, join a running club? And Mr. Lamming joined me on tonight's run.
Wow.
So that was nice. Yeah, there was 10 of us on Sunday, and there was 8 today, but it was 2, I think 3 were the same and another 5. So altogether about 15 or 16 of us. So that's quite good. So we just did a little 5K, just a little out and back, which was nice. I feel nice and refreshed. Did 10K yesterday just to get the old legs going. You know how it is.
So you went running in Rugby and you didn't end up in the pub as well?
Well. Now, this isn't a political podcast, okay? This isn't a political podcast. And you know why. You know.
I was...
But I don't. If this isn't a political podcast, then I also don't think that a pub should be a political pub. And there has been an event announced at my local pub, and it is a political party, and I put that in inverted commas because it's actually a registered business masquerading as a political party, are holding some sort of fundraiser in there. Bring a friend, £2 entry. So the Ivy Club in Rugby is now off my list of places where I will drink, because I will not go in, 1, a right-wing pub, or 2, a pub where politics are the order of the day. Because personally, the 2 things you shouldn't talk about in a pub, religion and politics, because they're the 2 things that people end up fighting over.
Exactly. Stick to football, because nobody will ever fight over football.
Exactly. But for the record, left-wing atheist. So there we go. That's the religion and the politics out of the way. We've got a short show, haven't we, tonight, Charlie, really?
We've struggled to try and find things to talk about, really, until we had a little bit of a saviour with some news coming out over the past few hours, really.
No, it's not news yet, isn't it? It's rumour. It's from Pete O'Rourke, so it could be. Yeah, he's only one. He's a rung slightly higher, I think, than who's the other one that charges you on his Patreon now and calls everybody fuds?
Oh, Alan
Scottish guy who writes for the Sun. Yeah, Belland. I got blocked by him because all he was doing. Oh, but the thing is, they all put exclusives out there. And the thing with Peter O'Rourke, he gets normally so the news is that Luton are set to appoint Marc Tracy. I would say it's 99% certain. If he's putting it out there as an exclusive and it's news, and it's not like a player, it's probably an agent has let it slip or whatever. Peter O'Rourke gets his little. So we're talking about Chief Scout now. what we actually said we were going to do was we were going to take some questions from the patrons. The reason that we're recording when there's very little to actually talk about is because we have committed to one podcast a week through the summer, no matter what, because people feel disconnected from the football club a little bit over the summer, or everyone's fighting for news. So it's just nice to come together, isn't it, and have a bit of a chin wag. So I haven't got the news in front of me, but as I understand it, Luton Town set to appoint our head chief scout, Marc Tracy, as their head of recruitment. I think that's about right, is it?
Yeah, more or less. Almost dead done deal, if you want to believe what the what the article is actually coming out and saying. And as you say, to be fair, if it's coming out as an exclusive on there, chances are it's going to be as close to, if not spot on with that. It's a weird one. A lot of people obviously commenting on the timing of it. I think that's kind of the big discussion point that I'm seeing so far on social media. Oh, it's just before the summer transfer window technically opens in like 2 days' time, I think. But we'll kind of get into the deep dive of that. Obviously, in a moment, you look like you want to say something, but
yes, timing's perfect, isn't it? Because all the scouting's been done, all the games are finished. Marc Tracy.
This is exactly the point I want to make.
Yeah, well, I've made it now. So,
no,
Marc Tracy's our chief scout, and by the sounds of things, he's been offered head of recruitment at Luton, so that's a step up. He's obviously a good guy. He's done a lot of good work for us. But people are saying things like big loss. Yeah, of course. Whenever you lose a member of staff, whenever a member of staff moves onwards and upwards, it's a big loss. Move to Luton Town to move upwards, just because they're in our division. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a big loss for us. And if he goes, then brilliant. He goes with our blessing. He's done a great job for us over the years, and we'll go and we'll find a new chief scout and we'll start again. But in terms of summer recruitment, I don't think that it's particularly damaging because the scouting has been done. We will have our list of targets. We'll probably be in conversation with the targets. So I think it would be short-sighted to say the timing is bad. But when people leave, when's the timing ever good? If you've got a settled team, you in your job, in my job, just today, funnily enough, the person that I report to for the company that I work for in Malta has messaged me and said she's leaving. So instantly there's going to be a period of uncertainty, but it doesn't change my output. It doesn't change the end game. Individuals around the place will have to shuffle around and make things work a little bit. But it won't be news to the football club either. It won't be, oh my God, what? They won't read Peter O'Rourke's tweet and think, oh my God, this is happening. They will probably had a good idea, and we'll go out and we'll replace, and hopefully we'll replace well.
Yeah, of course. I think whenever you lose a member of a team as pivotal as the recruitment team, no matter who that is, from sort of a junior analyst all the way up to chief scout, it's always going to take, be a little bit of a hit. You're always going to kind of not want to lose that sort of a person at any stage. But the way the club have always set those teams up, and we're not just talking recruitment in that, we're talking literally anybody within the football club all the way up to the head coach, is that if you take that one individual person out, it's not going to totally derail the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years at the football club. Instead, we're going to be able to put somebody else in there. There will, of course, be some changes that are made to systems, because that's always what would happen if you're losing anybody in kind of management, whether that's kind of front of house, if you like, in terms of manager, or obviously a little bit behind the scenes in terms of the recruitment. Although there are going to be minor changes, you're not going to have kind of these wholesale changes that you might start seeing at other football clubs if they lose a key man, such as in that position. Again, I totally agree. In terms of this summer, I think it makes very, very little difference. We'll have our short lists as kind of as much as you want to read into the fact that we do go in there with a list of 5 players per position that we actually want to sign going into the summer transfer window. We'll have those set in stone more or less already. The only real change now for this summer will probably just be, well, who becomes available that we actually want to sign, rather than let's go out there and find somebody totally new. So, yeah, I don't think it's that bad timing. It'll be a shame to lose somebody who lots of people that I've heard speak from the club, in particular, Jez George, when he does his presentation evenings, for example, the way he talks about the impact that Marc Tracy has on the signings that we make. I think, if I remember correctly, he was unbelievably pivotal, for example, in the signing of Ethan Errahan, and actually helping get that over the line as well. But being able... so having somebody who obviously we very much respect the voice of in Jez George talking so highly of someone else to lose that is always going to be a big shame. But like I say, not irreplaceable. As kind of harsh as that sounds.
Yeah, I think there's got to be the positive that people want our staff. Now, bear in mind, when the fitness guy went to Derby, what was his name? Ross.
Oh, yes, I do. Oh my, that's been a really bug me.
When he went, there was talks maybe of there being some dissent around Mark Kennedy. I think he fell out potentially with Mark Kennedy, as Mark Kennedy fell out with a few people. But I don't think there's any hint here that there is a fallout. Now, there will be dissenters who will say, well, it's Jez George, he's fallen out with Jez George. But Marc Tracy's been with us for a long while, and Jez has been with us for a long while, and they clearly had a decent working relationship. Sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the fact that a football club is a workplace. So for us, it's not. For us, it's a religion. It's a way of life. It's, everybody should. If we worked at the football club, we'd do it for free and we'd never leave and all that. Of course, yeah. But for the people that work there, for the Marc Tracys and people like that, it's a workplace. And it's, sometimes you get to a point where you think, I want to move on and challenge myself somewhere else. And it doesn't point to fundamental issues. And some of the people that may think that this is a blow are the same people that will say that we signed duds. And that's where this is a blow, is that actually our transfer record's been really good over the last few years, and people might disagree with me, but it has been really good. The 21-22 summer 2021 wasn't good. That wasn't a great window, and I think we can look back now with hindsight and acknowledge that. But actually, I think since that we've had some really good summer windows, and we've had some really succinct, winter windows whereby we've brought 2 or 3 players in, not 5, 6 or 7, who have made a difference. And people who tell me that that's wrong are wrong. Joe Taylor and James Collins attest to that. But obviously there's been other significant signings as well. Joe Gardner, decent when he came in. Okay, I understand that Sam Clucas was a bit of a miss, but he was there to cover as well. But Marc Tracy's part of a team, and the team will be weaker until we replace him. And then hopefully we will be back up to full strength. But yeah, it's a blow. But I don't think I've ever met Mark. I may have met him kind of in passing just to say hello, but he's clearly very highly thought of. So
yeah, absolutely. Luton are a huge club, and they're a club that at the end of the day, they've got £30+ million coming in this summer in parachute payments, and they're coming into League One. Now, that in a sentence in itself is a pretty stupid statement to actually come out with, but it's the reality that a lot of EFL clubs up and down the divisions are now having to kind of accept is the norm. The championship clubs that go up, the likes of Oxford United, who went up last season, they knew that they were going to be fighting with teams like that on a weekly basis. Now, don't get me wrong, we might not be fighting against teams like that on a weekly basis in League One, especially when you kind of compare it to some of the teams that have come up from League Two in Wimbledon and Doncaster, etc. Not that they're small clubs in any way, shape or form. But Luton are going to be a bit of an outlier in that next season, and they're going to be fighting up and near the top. Let's be honest, last season's championship campaign for them was very much below anybody's expectations. They're not going to accept that 2 years in a row, are they? So going to a club like that, an attractive prospect, it's obviously going to be a good opportunity for Marc Tracy, but it also just shows the type of intent that Luton are willing to show in League One next year.
Ross Burberry.
It was. I did research it as well.
He's just gone to Rotherham. 8 days ago, he went to Rotherham. He left Derby in July 2024. And then he's just gone to Rotherham as their head of recruitment, their head of fitness. So doesn't seem to stay anywhere very long. But then that's football. People move around. People chop and change. But backroom staff, players, clubs are going to recruit. Some clubs are going to lose players. Some clubs are going to lose staff. But it kind of leads us on to the strength of the division this season, which was kind of a talking point for me this week. Particularly, I did a Patreon-only video and an article on it as well. So do you think it's a strong division this year? I mean, people are looking at the badges and kind of going, well, this is going to be a failure if we don't do well, or that's going to be a failure if we don't do well. Sorry, I've just got a cup of tea coming. Lovely. Thank you very much. So the strength of the league we want to discuss briefly. Because we've mentioned Luton, huge parachute payments, dropping down out of the division, dropping down out of the championship. Other than that, the 2 teams coming down, not as strong as probably 2 that have gone up. The teams that have dropped out of the division, been replaced, by 4 teams who are on a promotion push, but nobody wanted to win League Two. They all kind of pushed each other up through being bad rather than being good. Is it a weak league then, Charlie?
First of all, it's got to be caveated with we don't know, especially not until August 31st or whatever date transfer deadline day actually is this year. Although we've got 2 transfer deadline days, haven't we? We've got June the 10th as well for some really weird reason. For that Club World Cup bollocks, quite frankly. But yeah. So they've done. So there's an early transfer window which opens from June the 1st to June the 10th, and then it shuts again and reopens on June the 16th, and that's for all clubs because of the FIFA World Cup, Club World Cup. So we're not doing a deadline day special, I don't think, on June the 10th. But yeah, it's a really weird system. But anyway, besides that, like I say, we don't know the true strength of the league until the transfer window closes. You look at Luton, I think Luton are probably the closest in comparison to one of the teams that have gone up, and that's going to be Birmingham, because realistically Luton could, not saying Luton will, but Luton could have the same spending power as what Birmingham did last summer, because they technically, when you look at the accounts, they will have the money to do so. It's whether or not they choose to do that. I don't think Luton will. I think they'll be a little bit more sensible with where they're spending their money and how much of that they're spending. But they could spend close to what Birmingham did. Then you look at the other teams. I still think Cardiff are going to give it a good go. Plymouth always give it a bit of a go, but they'll do it in a sustainable way. And like you say, the teams that come up, actually, in all fairness, they are on that bit of a promotion push. You compare them to the teams that went down. A couple of those teams that went down, and I pick Shrewsbury in particular here because I think they had kind of skated on staying up for about 3 seasons in a row, really, and it looked like their time was coming. So I think any team that gets promoted in place of them are actually going to make it a slightly stronger league at the bottom end. You look at some of the teams that had poorer seasons last year. Peterborough, obviously one of the ones that you have to pick out. Huddersfield, very much one of the ones you also have to touch on. Rotherham may also give it a little bit more of a go than what they were able to do last year. Like, the teams that were in and around us are likely to get stronger. It's then just about us getting stronger with them. There's always going to be a couple of teams that were maybe flying high this year that aren't going to be quite up there next year. Leyton Orient, although I really do think that they're going to be able to give it another go. You've got to look at them as probably one of the more likely ones. Maybe you're not quite going to get to that same point. Also, playoff final hangover can hurt a lot of teams, and we've seen that in years gone by in the EFL. So do I think it's a stronger division overall? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know yet, but I certainly don't think it's a dead cert to be weaker, like what I think a lot of people seem to be predicting online.
See, it depends what you class as a hard division. It's a hard division where 4 or 5 clubs are completely untouchable, and they score 100 points and everyone else is scrapping. Or is a hard division where everybody's pretty much of a muchness, and with a little bit of luck, you can finish top 6, but with a little bit of bad luck, you can finish bottom 6. I think it'll be a tighter, closer division. Really interesting news Sam Cummins has put in the chat here, which has really more or less since we've been on air or just before. So Plymouth are losing their manager, Miron Muslik, I think, to Schalke. Permission granted to speak to him. Now, I've just read their club statement, and this is fantastic. So I've got to read this because for me, a football club has always got to remain stoic. So if something happens that you're not happy with, you have to remain above it. You've got to be above the static. You've got to be better than that. Argyle can confirm that we have reluctantly allowed head coach Miron Muslik to open talks with a Bundesliga side, or 2 Scheins of Bundesliga, whatever Chris says, after he expressed his desire to speak with the German team and not return to England. Here we go. Despite regular communication since the end of the season and no mention of any issues, Miron has now made it clear that after extended periods away from his family, this opportunity provides him a chance to be closer to them. We are frustrated by the decision, having implemented clear structures, processes and personnel to aid Miron and his coaching staff as we look to return to the Championship. Not only that, the club have also moved quickly to bring in new signings and received repeated verbal promises from Miron that he was committed to Argyle and would do everything to help the club bounce back. And then it says he's joined the Greens in 2025 on a 3.5-year contract after a period out of the game. He will now leave Argyle just 4 months into that long-term commitment. We wish him the best for his future career. Sorry.
I love that. I love the little touch there of not saying we're letting him speak, but at the very end, he will now leave after 4 months. That
I mean, I understand why they're angry.
It very well.
Yeah. I understand why they're angry. That weakens Plymouth now going into the season, and that's why you can't really talk about the strength of the league, particularly because they've now got to go and find a new manager. The recruitment is going to be really tough. Anyone looking for a manager now, I think, is always a slight disadvantage. And it's like when Michael Appleton left us, people think leaving at the end of the season is the best thing to do. But actually, unless you announce it a month before and the club are already down recruiting a manager, Plymouth are now going to be forced to rush into it. Now, I know that obviously we have a strategy at Lincoln where we've always got an eye on the next head coach and the next manager. And I'm sure other clubs do that as well. It'd be naive to think not to. But to have already signed players for one manager and have to go in and get another manager could be really, really difficult, I think, for Plymouth. And, with Stephen Schumacher he would have been a natural probably to go there, having left them once before, but he's obviously at Bolton. I mean, it's the same old names. Would it be Michael Duff? I don't know who the favourite is, but from a Lincoln City point of view, that perhaps does weaken one of the teams coming down and puts them more in our kind of, not our financial cohort, but in our, we might actually be able to match them kind of level.
Yeah, really weird situation, actually, the fact that has happened now. But on the kind of flip side to what you're saying, obviously, yes, it very much is likely to weaken them because now they're going to have to go ahead and search for a new head coach. And if I remember correctly, some of their recent searches for new managers have been quite lengthy at Plymouth as well. So it could mean that you're talking 6 to 8 weeks until they announce someone else, unless they then try and rush through the process. But then if they try and rush a process that they've already got set in stone, that's when big mistakes start to happen in those kind of situations. But on the flip side, Plymouth seems to be like another kind of side that are going to be very similar to us in the sense that they know what their recruitment strategy is. Yes, okay, they've mentioned there that they have maybe tried to sign certain players based on the manager's specific kind of, some of his kind of specific wants in there. But they could potentially have a nice little compensation package coming their way. So he's still got three years left on his contract, and it is Schalke he's going to. That could be a good little bit of money. That could boost it up to the point where they're able to sign 1 or 2 players that were maybe just outside of their reach beforehand. But again, this is where we're kind of bringing it full back to. We don't really know until the end of the season. We'll inevitably do a 1 to 24 the week before the season starts. But until you get to the end of August, you don't know where you are. And no team in the division really knows where they are. Even at that point, you're still in a bit of a guessing game because you're playing football on paper by that point, because all you're doing is looking at the money that's been spent. And you're effectively, when you're doing your 1 to 24, you're almost doing it in like a budget table kind of situation. Because like, oh, well, they've spent big. They're going to be up near the top. And of course, you start to look at, okay, who is it that they've actually signed and things like that. But I don't know, maybe it shows that the budget table is actually a decent predictor early on in the season.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because actually our 1 to 24 from last season, we were asked to go through it, and I couldn't initially find it. So we have now found the 1 to 24. So before we go to a break, our 1 to 24 last season. So we had Birmingham City winning the league. So booyaka, that was good. Well done us. Bolton Wanderers second. Little bit of a misstep. Huddersfield in third. Little bit of a misstep. Charlton in fourth, which was more or less spot on. Peterborough fifth. I think so. Peterborough fifth and Rotherham sixth. So we got 2 of the top 6 right. We had Lincoln City in 8th, and I think I argued lower. We had Stockport in 9th. We had Wrexham in about 15th, I think, with Wickham in 14th. And we had Leyton Orient 9th from bottom. Relegated sides, we didn't do too bad. We got Shrewsbury, Crawley and Cambridge. We called Northampton to be relegated and not Bristol Rovers, who were mid-table. So 3 of the 4 relegated sides, 1 playoff side right and 1 automatic promotion side right. It's all right. But again, it wasn't particularly budget either. So maybe we should have based it on the budget table.
It just shows how difficult 1 to 24s actually are in the summer until you start getting a little bit into the season. And no, They are. They absolutely are. It's a slightly different to predict a winner of the division. That's one thing. But to start predicting a 1 to 24, because you're never going to get 24 teams in the right place. And anyone that tells you they will, well, they're lying to you. It's as simple as that.
You know,
it's always been a fun show, but
the value in them is giving people an opportunity to hear who signed who, how that fits in. So somebody else doing the research. I mean, the only one I listen to is not the top 20 because they're obviously brilliant, and it's one of the only other podcasts I will actually listen to. And I do like the 1 to 24s, not because I have any interest in who thinks Lincoln are going up or not. I don't get angry about it. I don't get precious about it. I just genuinely want to hear what people think. And you know, people's thoughts and opinions of people who I value and respect, like not the top 20, then I love to take those in, because I might have my opinion changed. The number of times I've listened to not the top 20 podcast and they've changed my opinion on something. They changed my opinion on XG because I used to think it was pointless, and then Plymouth, who we've just been talking about, funnily enough, I always say it with a big indicator of why XG isn't entirely pointless. So should we do a commercial break, Charlie?
Let's do it.
We'll do it on 26:05. Thank you. We'll be back shortly. Boom, 26:05. So a quick look through the comments. I like the fact that when people come in, they say hello to each other, which is quite nice.
That is.
MK Spokes says, "Why have I not slept?" I don't know. I kind of alternate. Some nights I sleep really well, and then some nights I put my head down and this gets going. I've always been an overthinker, and when things start rattling around in my head, I just don't think properly. So Flossie says hello. Flossie, I'm sorry I've been really brief on replying on Facebook today. I've got your gift here. I'll probably drop it in because Dunham's not when I come into town at some point, but I'll wait until you're back. She'll know what that means. Steve, how you doing, mate? Steve is coming up to my summer party a week on Saturday. He'll be playing in the pool tournament. He asked me what the rules were yesterday. The answer to that, Steve, is whatever favours me at the time. And Charlie's laughing, but he knows that that's true. John Booth.
Yeah, like rigging the draw.
Yeah, evening, John. I hope you're all right. Oliver Hardwick, evening, mate. We know Sam's on, evening to him. John's on, loads of time for John. You're right, mate. Good to see you. Roy is on. He's always with us. Good evening. I like the fact that people now start talking to each other, asking how everybody is and saying hello to everybody. I love that that community. Stu says, is there something happening next Thursday? Yes, there is. So we will announce that shortly. We'll announce it when we come back. Do we know if we're entitled to compensation from Marc Tracy? I didn't put this up in the podcast because the answer is no. I would think it's unlikely, personally, because it's more of a kind of an ancillary role than a management role. So I think it's unlikely, but I don't know. So John says, this is an interesting one. I'd love to know how intellectual property works. The problem is, I suppose it's like any job, really, isn't it? That sometimes people are recruited for that. They're recruited for their kind of their knowledge. So the fact is, Luton are probably fishing in different waters to us. So, if there is a player that we've been tracking who we might not quite have been able to get to, potential is that Mark will take them. The other potential for me is that Mark will know the likes of Ethan Arahan really well. And Luton are one of the clubs I think that Arahan's been linked with. Michael Vanderson, hope you're well. We are indeed. This is Keith, busy editing on his channel, which is a fishing channel, I assume. So we're a welcome break from that. Do you enjoy editing videos, Charlie?
Nope. Absolutely hate it because I have to listen to my own voice.
You could do more if you wanted. Kate is there evening, both watching whilst on a break at work. Are you watching any foreign football during the summer? She's watching the mighty Tromsø from Norway. Answer is no, I'm not.
Yes.
Let me guess, Charlie. Gibraltar.
Go on. Incorrect.
Gibraltar football. What were you going to
watch? My Spanish side, who I got a season ticket for last year, they got relegated. So we've got the 5th tier of Spanish football coming up, and lots of.
When does it kick off?
It'll be the start. I think it's quite early, actually. I think it's kind of late July.
So not really over the summer. So you're kind of not really answering.
It's in the summer, isn't it? Last time I checked, summer was June, July, August.
Anyway, Kate then also says in 2006-07, I got the top 7 of League Two right somehow on my site at the time. Didn't get a single other one right, so it's definitely a challenge. It's a lottery. It is. It's a lottery. We all think we know football, and there's always a story or a narrative that changes that. Ready to come back in, Charlie?
Absolutely.
Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of the slightly shorter Stacey West podcast. The first thing I would like to do before we crack on is tell you about next week's episode. Now, the club may already have told you about next week's episode in an email, which has been sent out today. So next Thursday, we are getting the opportunity to talk to Michael Scabala, Jez George, and Liam Scully. We are doing this on a live podcast. So initially, I approached the club and asked them if we could do an end of season special. They said yes. It was going to be just a really small crowd, 30 people, which was Patreons were going to be offered those tickets, and we were going to do that at the foundation, by the way, sporting the foundation top tonight. So then the club had an event that they needed to put on. They needed to give Gold Plus members advanced viewing of the home shirt. And they said, why not? Can we piggyback onto your event? So we kind of said, well, yeah, that's fine. So in front of a crowd of around 100 maybe next week, we'll be doing a live podcast. I can't put that out to everybody because we committed to kind of 30 people and the rest of club Gold Plus members. But we get to grill the manager, and we get to grill Jez, and we get to grill Liam, George Foreman style. We've got some cracking questions already. Please do email me with any reasonable questions. I can't say that we'll ask all of them because we do only have an hour, but we certainly want to get some answers with the right type of questions. We don't want to be bullish, but at the same time, we do want to ask things that people want to know, that genuinely want to know. So, for instance, there's always a debate about, does the attendance actually equate to the bums on seats, or is it season tickets plus people that pay on the gate? So if season ticket members don't turn up, they're counting on the attendance. Just want to know. And I understand that. So we'll ask that question, and we'll ask a few others. So it'll be a good night, won't it, Charlie? You won't be there, but it'll be a good night.
No, I'm getting some of my questions together, though. I've got a couple in my notes section on my phone that I'm hoping to send over to you that I certainly want asking. And you know, it's a really good opportunity, and it's great from the club that they're kind of, that they are happy, and we're going to grill. Well, I say you will be grilling them as much as possible next week, and it's going to be really good to kind of hear some of the responses to that, because to be fair, I can imagine some of the people at the club actually would quite enjoy getting some of those questions every now and again, and being able to really give some of those kind of frank answers to them that you maybe don't always get in a lot of kind of other open forums. Is a cup of tea good, is it? So
great mug as well. So I got it from
I like
Steve. There's a Steve, can't remember his second name now. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and his wife had a craft shop up in the Vale, and I think we got it from there. So when you send me those notes, they're not going to be in that awful big font that you need to read on your phone, are they?
Right. Well, now they're not, are they? Because now I'm going to make sure to reduce the size. Hey, if your eye keeps on getting puffed up the same way it is, you might need them in the big nose.
The last live show we did, I nearly got cancelled for making a blind joke on stage, and there was just dead silence. I thought that is a good joke, but it was just quick as anything. That's my problem with live shows, is I don't think before I open my mouth, and sometimes I open my mouth and something comes out that shouldn't. Do you remember the Mark Kennedy one we did? And he was saying how hard he'd worked over the summer. And I said, have you had a holiday? And he went, no holiday. And I went, oh, my heart bleeds for you. It's just like, oh, my God. Oh, dearie me. Yeah. And it was just a look. Yeah, I think at that point, that was when Mark Kennedy decided that I wasn't one of his favourite people. So, talking of favourite people, we all know who Charlie's favourite person was last year. It was Alex Mitchell. Football friends. Alex was on the bench. Yeah, he was on the bench for Charlton in their playoff final. They won 1-0. He's been probably on the fringes for a while now at Charlton Athletic. One of the questions, in fact, the only other question that we got asked ahead of recording was, do you think that with Charlton being promoted, there is a greater chance of us signing Alex Mitchell? Well, you're bound to know, Charlie. You probably ring him twice a day, so you can answer that question.
I ring twice a day, but for some reason he's not picking up anymore. He must have blocked me. I think, first of all, the easy answer to the question, if we were in for him, Charlton getting promoted, I think certainly helps with that and with our kind of chances on that. I think in terms of whether or not we would be in for him, I struggle to see a situation where the club don't at least entertain the possibility this year. There was no hiding the fact that last summer after his loan spell, the club were very much kind of trying to figure out whether a move was feasible. At the time, obviously, it wasn't with the money that Charlton were obviously able to come in with, which is totally fair enough. That happens, and that's probably happened 20 times every summer since we've been in League One, because we will get blown away by certain teams when it comes to transfer fees, when it comes to wages, all of this. So for whatever reason, for that reason, didn't happen last year. Could it then happen this year? I really do think that if we wanted to, we'd have a great opportunity. I think when you look at the fact that Alex has played the first half of the season, he was pretty regular, actually. If you look at his overall minutes for the year, they're actually not that bad. They're not as bad as what I guess the recency bias that you've got in your brain kind of immediately makes you think they are. But it is that kind of period between January and April in particular, where the minutes really started to kind of dwindle to the point where I think in February, March, April, he had a combined 43 minutes worth of football. And that in itself isn't going to be something that he enjoys. He's quite clearly a player that likes playing football. And you say that and you think that should be the case for every player, but you've also seen some players and you think, actually, do they enjoy being out on the pitch? But he was clearly a player that did. He wanted to be playing every game, week in, week out, when he was with us. And going to Charlton, that's not going to have been anything different. So if we were to give him that opportunity this year, when Charlton seemingly aren't anymore, I certainly think we'd be in with a great shot. And potentially it could even be making him kind of think twice about having joined them in the first place. Of course, financially and everything like that, you can't fault when a team like that puts an offer on the table. But maybe it does make a little bit of regret about it could have been at Cincy Bank a year earlier.
Maybe not. Kate says Mitchell could end up at somebody like Wimbledon, localish to him compared to us, and they'll probably be after players with League One experience. Again, I think the transfer fee really is something that could be a stumbling block. I think if he was likely to go anywhere, potentially Orient, been there on loan before, if they're looking at recruiting players from a slightly elevated level, but then they'll be hoping to stay as settled as possible. It might well be still in the championship plans. Like you say, he's had some minutes. Excuse me. Decent defender. I personally think probably League One I think he needs to be promoted with a team. And that's where we talk a little bit in the past about Pawdy as well. That, what's Pawdy's best route to championship football? Is it to move to QPR or Millwall tomorrow and fight for a place as a newcomer? Or is it to move to a team now who are going to play him in League One at the top end and then get promoted? It's probably getting promoted. But you have to look at Alex Mitchell and you have to look at Regan Poole and understand those players did that. They did the right move. I personally, I take off my Lincoln City glasses. I think Charlton was the right move for Alex Mitchell last summer, and not just because of money. Because the reality was, from R1 to 24, from heartfelt Lincoln City fans, I don't think that we were a top 6 side going into last season. I don't, and I thought Charlton were. No. If it came right under Nathan Jones, Charlton are a championship-sized side. So Alex Mitchell made the right decision. And some people said, well, they offered him more money. Yes, they did. But I think from a football point of view, he was playing regularly at the beginning of the season as well. He made the right choice.
Yeah, and on that as well, you've got to bear in mind that at the exact moment in time when that kind of decision seemed to have been coming about, when we were kind of in for him, when Charlton were in for him, it was also around the same time that we lost Lasse Sorensen and Lucas Jensen. And that was all around that kind of same point of the summer, or at least it very much looked like it was going to be happening. And they were, the season before, 2 of our best performing players. Now, although we look back and we think, actually, we've probably replaced them quite well, especially in Lasse Sorensen and replacing him with Tendai Darikwa. But if we think about the fact that, okay, we just missed out on playoffs, then we go into the summer and then boom, we're losing 2 of our best players from the season before, you're absolutely spot on with the fact that actually we don't look the most appealing footballing side at that point of the transfer window. So moving on to a Charlton who, like you say, honestly, I predicted Charlton to be in the automatic promotion spots last year. And I genuinely believe they were going to have a great year. Of course, they had a really poor start to the season. But then, when they dropped him and throughout the second half of the season when he wasn't playing, they then suddenly started flying up the division. And obviously, they got the promotion that I think a lot of people predicted them to have. And realistically, with the talent they have on paper in particular, they very much deserve. So, no, I very much agree with you that the footballing side of it, they did definitely look a more enticing project at that point of the year.
Just as a point, Lass and Lucas's departures were almost a month apart.
Were they?
June 18th for Lass, July 11th for Lucas. Lucas was quite late, if you remember, because Millwall were signed to keep it late. But that's by the by. So one thing that we have been paying a bit of attention to is retained lists. Chris and I obviously did our kind of a recruitment special last week, and retained lists didn't really throw up any names that we were particularly enthused with. Now, that may be because we don't know all of the names on those lists. There could be a youngster released by Blackburn Rovers that we are eager to snap up, that when Chris and I would look at it, even for a football manager researcher, we might go, well, we don't really know a lot about him, so we'll skip on. Chris is a little bit more thorough than I am, in fairness, with his recruitment. But just for a really lazy segment to wrap up today's podcast, we have found 5 ex-Imps that have been released by championship clubs this summer. And it's a simple debate on each one, a couple of minutes. Yes or no, would you have them back at Sincil Bank? And you can join in the comments if you wish, if there isn't too much of a delay. So shall we throw some names out there, Charlie, and have a little bit of a debate about whether they should come back to Sincil Bank or not?
Let's do it. I didn't know we had a list of 5, so let's do it.
How many do you think we had?
I can only remember 2 that we'd spoken about.
Okay. No, 3. Well, this one is Jack Vale.
The answer is no, I'm afraid. The fact that I think you had forgotten that he'd even been on loan with us at one point, and then remembered, and then added him to your worst EFL loans. I can't see us bringing Jack Vale back, and it's not one that I would be upset if we missed out on, and he did go to another club.
So lots of no's for Jack Vale. It's true, I did the 10 worst Lincoln City loan signings video, and I got all the way to the end. The video was actually uploading on YouTube, and we played a little game in the Stacey West WhatsApp group where I give them an opportunity to guess 3, and whoever guesses the highest kind of collection of 3 would win. And Emily put Jack Vale, and I was like, shit, I forgot to put Jack Vale even in it. That's how bad it was. My research was so meticulous. I had Jack Vale blindness, which is what he suffered every time he got the ball. No, he only had 2 shots during his Lincoln career in the league, and one of those was a goal. He had 100% shot accuracy, but do you know what? I think Jack was a little bit unlucky, because everyone's saying no, and that's obvious. He was a little bit unlucky because he arrived injured. Then we got 2 players injured. He never really stood a chance, I don't think. He really wasn't the type of player that we needed at the time. Although in terms probably of his profile, not hugely, unlike Joe Taylor, who came in kind of to replace him, which I think he did, didn't he? We took Joe Taylor on loan. Yeah, we did. He came in to replace him. Vale went in the December, and Joe Taylor came in.
Was Vale only the season before this one? Wow.
Yeah. So Jack Vale joined us. Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
No, you're right. Yeah. Wow.
Seems like a long while ago. So yeah, but
yeah,
so it said. Yeah, my internet apparently was going there, but it's fine now. So that's good news. Apparently I'm back, so that's good. Right, so that's Jack Vale. That's a massive no. We'll go on to number 2, which hopefully is also going to be a no, and it is Saxon Early. Charlie.
It is a no. Obviously the club saw something in him to bring him in as a backup, and that's all he ever was, if you can even call it that. Wish him well for the future, but no, there's absolutely nothing to kind of seem like we would be even remotely interested this summer.
So on my 10 worst Lincoln City's loan signings of the EFL era, I actually named Saxon Early 8th on that. And people are saying no again. Kate saying no. Steve Barton saying no idea. Again, all I'm going to say is some of these players, they're not bad footballers. But Saxon was, again, he was unlucky because he came in. There was talk of injury. It should have been his opportunity to take, with Rico injured, with Dylan Duffy with his gambling thing hanging over his head. Dom Jeffries at the time hadn't played left wing back. Saxon should have claimed that and didn't. I would imagine Saxon Early will end up in League Two. And I will imagine he'd be a half decent League Two player. He might do what Aaron Lewis did. You know how Aaron Lewis dropped down and kind of became a staple. There's no doubt Saxon's got ability, but I think the injury that he had, that sometimes you find when a player's had an injury and it's been a long injury, they don't come back the same. We see it with Tyler Walker. Years ago, people long before Charlie was even a twinkle in Tony Beeston's eye, we had Sean Dunphy, who didn't come back the same. Adam Watts was another who got injured and never came back the same. So, and I think that's probably Saxon. So here's an interesting one. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say he's literally not been in a league squad all season. So unfortunately, I think that kind of sums up where he's at the moment.
Kate says somewhere like Exeter, Newport, or Bristol Rovers. I think Newport's a great shout. Newport or Cheltenham, Saxon Early. That's where he'll rock up. So here's an interesting one. So for those at home, think about this before you type no. Jack Burroughs, released by Coventry City. Charlie.
Tough one. For me, it is still a no. Although it isn't as much of a dead cert no as the first two that obviously we have discussed. But for me, it is still a no. Obviously, he has been at Kilmarnock it was the first half of this season, actually, rather than the full season. But again, never truly got going there. And I can't see there really being the step back directly to us at League One. Went back to Coventry in the January transfer window when his loan ended. I don't believe there's been any kind of an injury issue, but just simply not made the squad at all. A couple of times on the bench, but overall not played a single minute in the league since coming back. And you sort of sit there and think, and I think it's an interesting one as well when you're talking about kind of a wing back who struggled to really make much of a mark in the Scottish Prem as well. Because you compare that to the likes of Jayden Brown, who went to the Scottish Prem, has actually done, did reasonably well enough there to at least get himself a permanent move to St Mirren from when he went there on loan. And then you see Jack Burroughs not even being able to do that at Kilmarnock, and you're sort of like, well, okay, is that really strong enough? And then again, you kind of compare that to the likes of Jamie Robson as well, who was obviously doing very well in the Scottish Premiership before then coming back down to us. I think there's not enough there for me to see us really going out and getting somebody like him in, because although you're guessing on the wages, if he's going to be, let's say our top end is going to be kind of 3.5K, whatever, which is kind of what it is on Football Manager. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I know. But even if he's, let's say, close to 2K, I feel like that's probably a little bit too much for what he can bring in so far.
Play left back, play right back, play left and right centre back. Probably more of a left back than a left wing back. For me, I would actually say I think he'd be a great squad player. And it seems that some of the YouTube followers agree with me as well. Steve Barton says it's a yes for JB. Sam Cummings says I'd take Jack back, decent cover player. Kate probably with the right answer. Burroughs maybe, but it depends on who goes out of the door. Andy Brown says good utility player, which, kind of a Dom Jeffries figure, perhaps a little bit. He's 24. Got to remember that. Flossie says maybe. Stu says getting back for pre-season and go from there. Frank says no, we need a proper left back. Jeffries is utility. Keith thinks no, we need more quality now, not just squad players. John Booth is a no as well. Never fully claimed a position of his own and end up floating around a few positions filling gaps. But don't squads need that? That's what Dom Jeffries has done, hasn't it? And everybody's said Dom Jeffries has had a decent season and he's never really settled in a position.
No, but he's also played above average in plenty of games in more than one position. And I think sometimes
Jack Burroughs played well for a while. Jack Burroughs played well for a while.
Yeah, but he's clearly struggled since then, and has not really been able to settle. No, obviously not with us, and I get that. That's the difference, which is why this is kind of a hypothetical debate where you're always kind of going to struggle to actually land on the right answer with that one. I kind of agree with the point that was made in the comments about we're probably now going to need to start looking at some certain quality. We've got a nice big squad. Obviously, we're going to need a couple more squad players. You're going to need them every summer, of course. But I don't really see him being that. I think we obviously need to start off by finding a left back, an out-and-out left back who is ready to come in and be a number one starter for 46 games. Because replacing Sean Rowan, if we have to replace Sean Rowan, by the way, but if we do, it's going to be probably, you mentioned it before in the podcast, going to be our hardest job. And I think bringing in somebody like a Jack Burroughs, I think that's fine if you get to September, he's still a free agent and we just want a little bit of cover because the transfer window's ended. That's fine. But I certainly wouldn't have him as a target this early on in the window.
7.4 against Wickham, the readers gave him. 7.8 against Sheffield United. 7.1 against Derby. 8.1 against West Ham, 7.4 against Wolves under 21, 7.7 against Charlton. I mean, he was quite a well-liked player until his car accident. 7 against Barnsley. Was doing quite well. Ended up with an average of 6.42 for that season, which left him above Danny Mandroyu, Dylan Duffy, Ali Smith. Left him above Sean Rowan, above Freddie Draper, above Jovan. Just, do you know what? You're quite right. There isn't a right or a wrong answer. But I do think that having a utility player is really useful. And I think certainly if you want that flexibility to go from a 3 to a 4, etc., I just think Jack would be a good choice. But let's move on because we need to get wrapped up fairly soon. Cohen Bramall.
No. At the moment, no.
No, full stop. I was surprised when we managed to sell Cohen up. At the time, I was convinced we were going to be selling him down, and he moved up. Lots of pace. Obviously, just been released by Portsmouth. Been around the Championship. Really good in terms of his pace, but his end product was always a little bit average for me. And he's not a left back. He was a left wing back. And we will not, in my opinion, be signing somebody that is a dedicated left wing back. We need somebody that can actually play as a solid left back. And I think defensively there were elements of Cohen's game for me which just weren't quite there. Sam Cummings says yes, he was electric. Flossie says it's a no, and Sam said he liked Cohen. He had something. He was quick and he was a nice guy. But for me, he's one on this list that wouldn't fit in a Michael Skubala side. Jack Vale would. He would fit in the side. Saxon Early, possibly, but Saxon and Cohen were kind of similar type of players, so no from me. It's a no.
Yeah, I get the idea that because of his pace, he's just automatically kind of this more attractive player to fans, and I get that because you see a player running from left back and getting to the byline in rapid fashion. Absolutely, that excites you. That gets the bums off the seats. But if you can't do anything when you've got the ball into that position, what's the point of getting into that position in the first place? And I do agree. I get the idea for longing for those quick players, but realistically, that should be more of a winger, not the left back option when we're now going to be in a back four, and we are going to want a more solid left back option, not, like you say, as left wing back.
Now I know this final one. This is one that I found on the list that we haven't discussed. And for me, it's a yes all day long and twice on a Saturday afternoon. But I know, given his injury record and given a whole load of other things, that it's genuinely going to be a no. But for me, this is heart over head all day long. This is Harry Anderson levels of being released and me going, oh yeah, we're signing. We'll find somewhere for him. I don't care less because I love this lad. I love him as a person. I think he's a great guy. I'm actually still in contact with him, as you are probably a little bit with Alex. I still drop him a message every now and again. It is Anthony Scully all day long.
Yeah, look, I get the idea for longing for somebody like Scully to come back.
Oh,
great, great player. Obviously fantastic for us, and what he was then able to kind of go. Well, obviously not go on afterwards after he left us, but kind of what he could do for us when he left the club as well, and going on for some money as well. Yeah, look, a real positive from the whole part of his time at the club, and like I said, the leaving side of it as well. But it is a no. But I totally agree with the wanting it to be a yes. You want to try and find any reason to justify it being a yes, even though it isn't. And you know what? It kind of goes a little bit like with Tyler Walker. I still think, okay, his injury record maybe not quite as bad when we signed him 2 years ago was what I think it was made out. Obviously sometimes on social media and things like that, but it wasn't exactly great. But you didn't care in that moment when he signed. And if Anthony Scully were to sign this summer, we would sit here, we'd probably all jump on a live the exact same as we did when Tyler Walker signed, and we'd spend the first half an hour of it talking about how amazing the transfer is. Yeah, all right, we spend the last 10-15 minutes talking a little bit more objective. Right, is this really the right move to take us to the next step? Sure. But that first half an hour, you're going to be reveling in the joy of bringing him back. So yeah, it is a no, but I totally get the heart wants it to be a yes.
Play him as a 10. He could play in that 10 role nice and easy. I think people probably tend to agree with you. Steve Barton says not for me. Sam says Scully cutting and bending it in the top corner. Yeah, loved all of that. Stu says yes, but where would he play and who would he replace? Good option off the bench. He's 26, would depend on the cost, I think. Sam's quite right. Don't think he's what we need. Obviously, he's not quite right. Keith says, no, I love what he did for us, but I don't want the Tyler Walker situation again. Absolutely 100% agree. Andy says, Harry Toffolo out of contract. Yeah, zero chance that he'll be in the Championship. Yeah. John Booth says, great lad, but not for me. This is Scully. Imagine he may well sign for Collier on a permanent. And Flossie says, heart ruling the head, but no. How many goals, Charlie, without checking right now, has Anthony Scully scored from open play since he left Lincoln?
It's going to be low. 2.
1 from open play. How many starts has he had in the league since leaving Lincoln?
I'm literally only going to include his time at Colchester, so I'm going to go with 10.
6 starts.
Yeah.
1 at Wigan, 3 at Portsmouth, and 2 at Colchester.
Only 2 at Colchester.
He's been injury ravaged. I messaged him a little bit because do you know what? He sponsors our events. He sponsored us to do the 10K last year. Yeah, put your thumbs up.
Now I feel rude for doing that. Yeah, no.
I just messaged him like when he's injured or something. I just message say, "Oh, sorry to see that. You know, hope you're on the mend." And I think he was having an operation that his surgeon had told him should correct the longer term issues. So I think if somebody gets him firing and starting games in League 2, he'd absolutely smash it. Right, I think that's enough, Charlie, don't you?
Well, considering we said we might just have to set up for a 30 to 40 minute podcast, we always do this, and I don't even know why we bother having the conversation saying it's going to be a shorter one.
No, me either.
Never is.
So that was episode 384 of the Stacey West podcast. We had nothing to talk about, but we did find plenty to discuss with our great band of watchers. I think we topped out about 50 today, which was really good. Great little community in the chat, so we appreciate that. If you are listening to this on a podcast at home, thank you very much for listening. We do pledge to do you a podcast every week through the summer. We may be doing some throwback stuff. There is even talk of us watching back a game, for instance, Southampton in the Coca-Cola Cup in '96, and then doing a podcast as if it was played this weekend, which would be really, really interesting. So if you've got any ideas, do let us know. We'll be happy to do pretty much anything. I've also looked at perhaps doing evergreen podcasts where, because Charlie wants to learn a little bit about history of Lincoln City. Kyle Fox said to me a few weeks back he wants to. So I thought about doing a podcast on a season. So like an hour on the 2002-03 season, the big games, the players, the background context. So if you think they'd be good, let us know as well. But in the meantime, I am going to go and clip this up. Charlie's going to go and polish his forehead. And you can all go away knowing that you are listening to the #1 Lincoln City podcast. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.